So hi, Wilta here. I'm gonna be doing another video on my competitive weapon pool. This time going to my Rainmaker alternative to Dynamo, that being Flingza, specifically foil. So I'm gonna get right into it. Talking about what the weapon is, what it does, and why I play it. So first of all, I'm gonna be comparing it to Splat Roller and Dynamo quite a bit. But you should be fine if you're not too familiar with those weapons. So the general idea is it's a roller, one-shot people. A horizontal flick is about the same as flat roller. I think the range and damage are the same, but the flick is an unnoticeable amount faster. 2 frames, which if you're not familiar is 1/30th of a second. So it's pretty much the same as the flat roller flick, which is really nice. It's something the weapon is really good at, just popping out and killing people immediately. Vertical flick, however, and the range for the horizontal flick, if you're not familiar, is about the same as things like Sploosh, Dapples, Luna, for the one shot at least. Vertical is about the range of a splatter shot or an end zap, but is much slower. If it's hard to tell, the vertical flick is over twice the speed, or takes over twice as long as the horizontal flick. But generally speaking, like the one shot from vertical is nice, but if you're going for a one shot at close range, you're much better off going for the horizontal. The vertical is almost exclusively for chip damage. And of course, the speed compared to the other rollers, the vertical is going to be much slower than any other roller, but I already said horizontal is basically the same as flat roller. It's very quick. And the vertical is faster than Dynamo by quite a bit, about the speed of Dynamo's horizontal, while also having a very long range. So yeah, the vertical is surprisingly fast. Of course, I'm doing this right after the 5.2 patch where they increased the speed of vertical by like 3 frames, but realistically that's very tiny difference. Yeah, chip damage. Horizontal doesn't really do much in the way of chip damage. Like, if they're outside of one-shot range, they chance you'll do a little bit, but for the most part, you're just gonna be doing one shot. You're not gonna chip damage or assist with teammates from that, but vertical is very good at chip damage. If you watched my Dynamo video, you'll know that Dynamo's vertical flick is about this far away. That's about the range of a Hydra, which Flingza's is not that much shorter, while also being very much faster. So you'll see that's the difference, basically. Very small, just about heavy splatlings around here, then like Bamboozler and Jet Squelcher around here, so it's kind of in between those in range for max range. And it does about the same damage at max range as Dynamo, so it's very good at that sort of safe chip damage from a long range. And the paint is another thing I can go into. If you saw my Dynamo video, you know that I consider there to be 2 types of paint. There's fast paint and there's safe paint. Dynamo was pretty even between the two, but for Flingza, just like with most rollers, it's pretty bad at fast painting. Kinda got... It's alright-ish, but it's pretty splotchy and hard to swim through, and doesn't give you much mobility, and it's kind of slow at that. The rolling does help a little bit to make it less splotchy, but it's definitely one of the weaknesses of the weapon, is that it can't just paint a small area quickly. And I can go into why fast painting and safe painting are important in a bit. But what it is really good at is that sort of safe painting. It has not too much shorter range than stuff like Charger or Dynamo with that painting. And it's also pretty quick. It doesn't use up very much ink. I don't know exactly how many flings you get out of tank, but it's a plenty reasonable amount. You're not going to be running out of ink, same as something like a Dynamo. It has plenty of reserves to come from. But you'll see, there's sort of... It starts thin. I'm gonna reset for a second. It starts thinner, it's wider at the end, which is pretty much exactly what you want from a safe painting weapon. You compare that to something like Flosher, which I can probably find in a second. Might take a second because going through this whole list is very awkward. Takes way longer than it should. Compare that to something like Flosher. Like, this is known for being a safe painting weapon, basically. It has this long, thin trail, but the end paints really well, so that pretty much means you can see something on the map, you can paint that area specific. Doesn't matter how far away it is, as long as it's within range. Which makes it a very good safe painting weapon, and Flingza is pretty much the same. If I can get back to it. We've got this thin end, but it's wider at the end, the other end, and you safely paint any area on the map that's within range. It's really good at it. So I'm gonna go into recon mode, just kind of demonstrate to the best of my abilities why fast painting and why safe painting is actually important, because I don't think I've done that very well yet. So here I am in Wahoo World. It's just one of the maps that was in the rotation right now. But if I go... Actually, I dropped down a little too. Let's say I'm up here and the other team is down there. Like, they have that whole area to work with to kind of shark in their own ink, move around. They can throw bombs at me without really need to deal with me. I'm just gonna have a really hard time dropping down to do anything. Quick at them and one-shot them or anything. So safe painting weapons do really well is sort of just painting out that way. And if somebody's sharking there, they are forced to move, or I'll hit them with chip damage. And that's kind of what bombs do too. Why bombs are extremely important on short-range weapons, but Flingza as a main weapon, especially good at that corridor. Quickly pressuring a certain area to find out where people are. Because if you drop down without knowing where people are, somebody could just jump out from behind that wall. They could be sharking down there. It could be anywhere, so just being able to quickly paint an area safely is a really good way of finding out where people are and being able to make kind of quick plans on what you're going to do from here. If you know where people are, you can kind of play accordingly. If you know there's nobody in this area because you safely painted this area, move up. And while you're doing all that, you're getting special. Which will help you push in as well. But then on the other side of that is quick painting. So once I have control over this side of the map, I'm gonna want it painted to give me more mobility, get around while fighting the other team and making it hard for the other team to move. As well as just like quickly build a special for when the other team pushes back in. And that's where this weapon's a little bit weaker and where things like Junior are best. Like if I want to paint just this square, like I can kind of slowly vertical flick over it. Not really efficient and it's very slow. Or another equally sized area, I can kind of horizontal flick a bunch. It's very splotchy, it's very slow. And I don't want to be sticking back here painting for longer than I have to. Because I want to be in a position to wait for the other team to push back in. And so that's why things like Junior and L3 that paint quickly are really nice. Because they can just like paint an area and then push up and not have to waste too much time painting your side of the map. But that's something you consider when building a team comp, not something you need to have on every single weapon, which is why I still play Flingza despite kind of being weak at quick painting. As long as I have other weapons that can quick paint quickly, I can get away with just kind of being the safe painter. Just does this a bunch, gets a bunch of missiles. Yeah, that's why you have teams. I haven't mentioned like saying this is a frontline weapon or a midline weapon or anything because I don't actually like that kind of categorization since most weapons don't actually neatly fit into that. Instead, I like to think, what does this weapon do? What does this weapon struggle with? And so a team comp you're gonna build around making up for the weaknesses of the other weapons on your team. So this weapon struggles with quick painting. As long as the rest of the team has quick painting, it's good. This weapon was really good at just safely doing chip damage and safely painting. So as long as the rest of my team has weapons that benefit from that safe painting and safe chip damage, this is a good choice for the comp. If you kind of get what I mean by that. Yeah, you want... In a team setting, you want safe painting to kind of contest an area without putting yourself at risk. And you want quick painting to quickly paint an area when you don't want to just stick around there and want to go, like, just quickly paint that area and then push up and do something else. Which is why you want weapons on your team that do both. And now I'm gonna go back to the training room. So before I go into, like, when you would want to play this weapon, when you wouldn't want to play it, as well as why I play it in the situations I do, I'm gonna talk a little about the two different variants. For me personally, I only play foil. That's because I use it specifically for Rainmaker. And foil is just always gonna be better for Rainmaker. It's the best, just kind of all-around kit. It's got a lethal bomb, which is nice to have. Pretty much any situation for just throwing out there without committing. And it's got missiles, which are just a good all-around special. Pop them off while your teammates are pushing in. And it doesn't really need a commitment to use missiles, you just kind of shoot the missiles off and then you already have access to sub and main immediately. It's especially important in Rainmaker in my opinion, because when you're defending you want, like, every second counts. So when you have specials like Ten of Missiles or Ink Storm that you can kind of just pop out and still have access to your main and sub while they're in infect, that's especially strong at stopping the Rainmaker in a mode that's really fast moving. But the other kit does actually have some potential in my opinion. That's Splash Wall and Splat Bomb Rush, which is... It might seem a little bit weird to have Splash Wall and Roller, but again, this does have that sort of vertical flick, safe painting, safe shift damage thing going. So most of the time you're gonna be better off, like, the special's nice, but isn't anything amazing to choose the weapon for the special alone. But most of the time you're gonna want to pick this for the Splash Wall. And that would be kind of a map-specific thing in my opinion, where if it's a map and mode where you're just gonna potentially get a lot out of the Splash Wall, I think there is definitely potential for this kit. And some situations I could see it working are like Starfish Splat Zones, where you can kind of throw a wall off on the sides and take fights on the sides of the map. And when you're on the side, you can throw up a Splash Wall and just throw a Bomb Rush through the wall at the zone. I think that's a map where vanilla could be really nice. Another one I can think of is actually Inkblot Art Academy Clan Blitz. If you know that, there's like this little step area to get up to the basket. It can actually be really nice to just throw down a wall to stop people coming up there. Or you can, when you're scoring, you can throw up a wall between you and the other team to make it easier for your team to keep scoring, kind of like what bubbles do. Except you don't have to commit to a bubble weapon. But on that map in specific, I think it's actually a pretty good map for a splash wall on zones, and it's also a pretty good map for bomb rushes because of just kind of how the map is laid out in this sort of, you kind of got, it's hard to explain without showing it, but it's like a ledge on your side that drop down into mid, that drop up into their side. Like, bomb rushing any of those drops, either dropping down or dropping up, just bomb rushing over that can be really nice on that map. But yeah, this is, Vanilla's definitely a niche kit, but I can definitely see a use for it. Especially if you're a Flingza main and not just playing it like I am for a alternative to a different weapon. Go back to... as for when you would want it and when you wouldn't, Flingza is actually a pretty adaptable weapon outside of like fitting into a team comp. Of course, you're gonna want weapons that can quickly paint to make up for the lack of quick painting. But outside of that, as far as maps and modes go, I avoid a map like New Albacore Hotel that's extremely open, but for the most part, or that in like Triggerfish, but for the most part it works on most maps without really issues. And it really works on every mode too. Like, Suction Bomb Missiles is just a really good all-rounder kit for any mode. And I already talked about the vanilla kits with Splash Wall and Splat Bomb Rush for that. But realistically, if you wanted to main this weapon, it's very much... It's something you'd want a few alternatives to, but it's definitely something that can work on every mode and almost every map. Oh, that's kind of most of what I want to talk about with this weapon. I'm forgetting something, but I'm sure I'll notice when editing it if I have forgotten anything. So I'm just gonna go on to my builds on Sendo.inc, just like I did last time. I just realized I don't think I really went over why I specifically play this very well. So I'm gonna add this in post, but the main reason I personally picked it up because as a Dynamo player I'm already pretty used to just aiming and being able to hit vertical flicks. So it made sense a lot for me to pick it up because the hard part of the weapon that needs a lot of practice to get good at is something I already am doing a lot with Dynamo. So it's a lot easier for me personally to pick this up as a secondary. And I can kind of make use of something that's kind of an asset for me where I know how to get a lot of use out of vertical flicks. And so it makes sense for me to pick up this weapon as an alternative to Dynamo. That's why you see me picking up instead of something like K-Shot, which would be easier to fit into the comp. But K-Shot is kind of just something... It's a good pocket weapon for anybody, where if your main doesn't work very well somewhere, or... Well, that's the main idea of it, but... If what you would normally play doesn't really work somewhere, K-Shot is the easiest weapon to pick up and put in there. And the reason I'm not doing that and I'm doing Flingza instead is because I actually have the kind of skills to pick up Flingza and just play it as a situational thing without needing to invest too much time into it. Plus, Rainmaker's an entire mode, so I might as well find something interesting since I'm going to be playing this for most maps on Rainmaker, which actually puts it as my second most played weapon in my weapon pool. But that's something I think is worth thinking about when looking into the kinds of weapons you want to pick up. Or if you got a specific weapon that's maybe has a mode where you don't feel comfortable with it. Just Rainmaker for me with Dynamo. Or maybe there's certain maps you need alternatives to. I think it's always important to look at the weapons that have similarities to stuff you already know. To kind of try to find stuff that uses the skills you've already developed with other weapons. It's a lot easier to pick up something that has shared mechanics with something you already played than it is to just pick up an entirely new weapon. Like if I were to be like, oh, I'm gonna play Octobrush instead on Rainmaker, I have no idea how to play this thing. I've got a general idea of what it does and how it plays, but I would need to invest a ton of time in order to actually be able to play Octobrush in a competitive setting. Whereas with Flingza, I know how to vertical flick, I know how to use horizontal flicks. A lot of stuff carries over from Dynamo. And while a lot of things are different, and I have to kind of get used to the differences, it's a weapon that's specifically a good option for me. That makes sense. So I'm just gonna put this in play before I go over to gear. So now I'm actually gonna head over to the gear page, even though technically that part is already recorded. You there. So here is my Sendo.ink page. And something you might have noticed in-game is that I wasn't using Ninja Squid. That might seem a little bit weird to somebody who is used to seeing Ninja Squid on every single roller, except like Dynamo, but for me, I don't think it's really that necessary for the weapon, and you're generally better off running different abilities for the most part, at least in my opinion. Ninja Squid is definitely strong on the weapon, and it gets a lot of use out of it, but it is quite an investment. You'll see kind of my Ninja Squid right here, my Ninja Squid build. I've got a main and 3 subs of swim speed on top of the main of Ninja Squid, and that just gets it up to kind of default swim speed, which is still slower than my main build with 2 subs of swim speed. But even with how much I've invested into the Ninja Squid ability, like my Ninja Squid build does not move as fast as my non-Ninja Squid builds do. And I think the mobility and the ability to fit other abilities in your gear is generally going to be more important. But that is kind of an opinion thing. So first I'm going to pull up my main build, which is QR Stealth Jump. What you'll notice with all these is I basically have 3 builds, and each of those 3 builds has a stealth jump variant and a non-stealth jump variant. So you see my QR build is my main one with stealth jump, and then scroll down here is the same build except without stealth jump it has another main of QR. But I've got 2 subs of main power, which just, it's more consistent with damage output. I don't put nearly as much as I do with Dynamo, but it's still really nice to have and makes it a little bit easier to get kills or get assists or whatever. Then I have Comeback, which is an ability this gets a lot out of. Quick mobility out of respawn. Special charge out of respawn. Sub saver, ink recovery, main saver out of respawn. There's a lot of things you get for 20 seconds, I think, out of respawn. That's just, it's really nice to have on a weapon like this. And then quick respawn to allow me to take more risks and just be back after a failed risky attempt I had trying to do something. Of course, QR only takes effect if you die without getting a splat, but it is still really nice for just always being there when you need to be there on the map, if that makes sense. But you want to avoid being off the map as much as possible, but you also don't want to avoid taking risks, which is why QR is good, because it allows you to take risks while minimizing the risk of just not being there to defend when that risk doesn't work. And then other than that, I've got just 2 subs swim speed and like my usual utility subs I put in anything I can fit it on. I don't have it on everything, it's just if I can fit it without compromising on something else, I'll put these abilities. And then other than that, again, Ninja Squid. I do like it on maps like Port Mackerel, where it's especially flat and especially open. It's a lot harder to kind of get around and get up to people. Because normally I think it's better to just kind of use the stage geometry to get close to people rather than relying on an ability that takes up a lot of your gear. But on a map like Port Mackerel, I think it's a little bit hard to get in behind people without being noticed by the other team. And so Ninja Squid really helps with that kind of map. Another one I could see it on is like Skipper Pavilion, where it's really open in the mid. So for me, I still use Ninja Squid. I just see it as more of a map-specific thing. And you'll also see my Stealth Jump one doesn't have comeback, since I kind of have to sacrifice on something to fit Stealth Jump. It's Ninja Squid and the swim speed to make up for the Ninja Squid slower swim speed is too much to also have comeback. And the other thing I have is Haunt. You'll see stealth jump build, non-stealth jump build. And Haunt, I think, is just really nice on most weapons as a map specific thing. You'll probably notice that I like to run Haunt on a lot of things. But it's, of course, the example I've given before is Black Belly, where it's a little bit harder to keep track of people with all the verticality and places people in hides, so I think the information Haunt gives is especially good there, and also I'm gonna put it this way, it makes it harder for the other team to sneak up on you, while also making it easier for you to sneak up on the other team. Because you know where certain members of their team are at all times because you have the Haunt ability on them. Of course, it depends on the situation. You have to die to someone first, and they have to stay alive long enough for that Haunt ability to stay on them, but it is really helpful in avoiding people sneaking up on you and being able to sneak up on the other team, which is very strong on the kinds of maps where it's easy to kind of stay hidden and use the map to get in behind the other team. And other maps where I'd consider it are things like Walleye Warehouse, where there's a lot of those side areas where you can get in behind the other team without them noticing, or something like Arowana Mall, which has a lot of places to kind of hide and get in behind the other team. So I think the information Haunt gives is especially strong on those maps and worth considering for not just Flingza, but weapons in general. But again, most of the time I don't run Haunt or Ninja Squid and just run a QR build. Because most of the time I don't need Haunt or Ninja Squid. It's a map specific thing. But that's gonna be it with Flingza. I definitely hope more people consider this weapon, because even though I only use it as an alternative to Dynamo for Rainmaker, since Dynamo's kind of slow for Rainmaker, I do think it's a really strong weapon nobody really considers. And I hope more people just get into this weapon and actually play it competitively, because you don't see Flingzas competitively ever. I've seen maybe once or twice in Japanese Splat Zones tournaments. Even then, that's not often. And Japan has a tendency to actually try out weird things that you don't see get used outside of Japan. But that's gonna be the end of the video for me. Hope you liked it. I'm gonna be doing more of these in the future. Just going over the rest of the weapons I play competitively, and I might even start doing some weapons I don't play competitively, just to kind of shed some light on some of the underappreciated weapons nobody really plays, and kind of show that there are reasons why you might want to play it. That's it. Bye.